Today we're in conversation with Sonali Khan, the Managing Director of Sesame Workshop India. As Managing Director, she spearheads an organization that combines the power of mass media with educational outreach to prepare our children for school and life. Under her leadership, the organization develops and implements groundbreaking programs to reach children everywhere, especially those who need it the most. Sonali is a global advocate for human rights and for ending violence against marginalized communities, with an emphasis on girls and women. Her work has focused on promoting gender equity in education, empowerment of adolescent girls, along with ending domestic violence, sexual harassment, and early marriage. Sonali is a proud recipient of the prestigious Nari Shakti Puraskar Women's Empowerment Award from the President of India. In 2016, she also received the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship for her work in ending child marriage. Welcome, Sonali. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I must tell you, I'm quite excited because I'm a huge fan of Sesame Street. My children who are now in their mid-20s right now actually grew up watching Sesame Street, right? And though we didn't really allow them to watch TV, this was one exception, and they could watch Sesame Street regularly. And of course, they had their lovely characters who I invited to join us for the program today, you know, their little
Oh, well, my favorites are a little bit away, so if you give me a chance, I'll bring them.
Okay. Oh, you got Oscar, you have Oscar, and I have Big Bird, and I have Cookie Monster. Then I brought Bert and Ernie.
Oh, I only have him.
And also, you know, the favorite little lovable Elmo.
Oh,
this, right? So
such a pleasure to see all of that with you.
Yeah, I still kept it. All my kids' toys, I still kept them, right? So, I mean, I enjoyed them as much as my children did, I think. And but I know Sesame Street has, children have been viewing Sesame Street for long before that. Since 1969, I believe, Sesame Street was launched. And since then, it's been educating and entertaining preschoolers and toddlers, initially through TV and radio, and now, of course, through digital media and mobile apps, etc. Right? So, Sonali, I was just wondering if you could tell us when the original vision, the people who created Sesame Street had a vision of education for preschoolers. And when I've watched these shows, it actually goes beyond just the 1, 2, 3s and ABCs.
Correct.
So what was the actual vision of what they wanted children to learn?
So, the founders are still alive and they're in their 90s now. But if you think back to 69, where, television was still black and white, and, the way they thought about the thing was basically using television to educate, because the inner city kids did not get quality education. And how could television, because children were watching TV, learning jingles, they were, Joan Gans Cooney, actually, she got a grant from, I think at that point, Rockefeller Foundation and a couple of other, prominent funders, to really, she went to them with a case in point and said, okay, if children can learn jingles and other such things watching TV, why can't we educate them? So this was actually the foundation of the experiment. And then they started forward and realized how in the US, especially kids who were underprivileged, didn't get access to good quality preschool content. Children were watching it and they were really enjoying and learning. And look and behold, it not just spread as a brand in the US, where I think 3 generations of parents and children grandparents, parents, children have actually gone through Sesame content, but now it's in 150 countries. In India, it's now nearly 15 years since Sesame has been here, and of course the show here is called Gully Gully Sim Sim. So that vision really grew from there.
And what is the kind of education they were trying to, it's like I said, it's just not the ABC.
No, you're very right. I think right from the beginning, it was really clear that it was not just about the alphabet and the number, but it was about skills. I think very early on, most of the learning was based on very core values. So if you think about Sesame, it's about values for children as well, whether it be respect, whether it be, looking at diversity. We were one of the first, organizations that started talking about diversity, accepting difference, being respectful. So learning those kinds of values, good habits, wash and hygiene, multiple other things. And Nalini, I'm sure your kids enjoy that. So it's all about those kinds of, and then skills, sometimes problem solving, managing your, emotions. So it sort of provided a holistic education package to children. It wasn't, and I think that's always been the core of Sesame's pedagogy, that we look at children for what we call as comprehensive development, which is what it's about. You can't just teach children numbers and alphabet. They have to learn the entire thing. So that's where Sesame really positioned itself, and then play-based learning. So it's entertaining, and through this entertaining and fun way to engage children, and therefore move on the journey of education. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I think, like you rightly said, my experience is also a lot of the emotions, Oscars, angry or grouchy, or, bring out, or Elmo's happy, or someone's upset, and how do you handle those emotions? So it's helping children actually name those emotions, and helping them learn how to regulate their own emotions. So that's a wonderful.
It's a big one. For example, there's love. We did something, I still remember. It was really interesting. Helping children understand, say, for example, immediate gratification, how to control yourself. So if you get a gift, do you just immediately open it up? So how do children learn self-control? How do, so all that is sort of built, like to your example, in really interesting ways to engage children. And actually, if you look at it, these are very difficult concepts even for adults. So how do you teach them to children in a fun, engaging way? If for example, as adults, and I love this, I still remember when I joined Sesame and I met the head of education, Rosemary, who's been with Sesame, I think, for a very, very long time. And I had the privilege of meeting her in New York. And when I went to her room, she picked up this little jar with it's like with all these sparkles, and it's a jar. She shook it up, and she said, like, suppose a child is feeling anxious or angry or wants to manage this, so we have this jar, and the child shakes it up until all those sparkles settle. The child needs to sort of control oneself. So you wait for those sparkles to settle, and then you talk. So it's a kind of a jar to help manage your emotions. So, how to make children, because when a child is feeling anxious or something, then there are ways in which you can engage with the child. So I think this was one really interesting lesson, that one could just immediately take away. You could create this jar at home if you like, with some kinds of colorful liquids and these sparkles, and the child shakes it up when they're anxious, and looking at that sparkle manages to control their emotions.
So what we call the calming jar, I guess.
Yes.
So what's interesting is, I think in 2006, Sesame Street has come to India, but I think you beautifully adapted it to the environment of India, the languages, the local flavor, and also the, so many characters you've added to Gali Gali Sim Sim, as it's called here, right? Muppets such as Boomba and Chunky and Jagadu. So I think these are all characters that actually the children of India will be able to relate to and connect with, right? And I think, I don't think Cookie Monster is probably not someone they may connect to, but I'm sure like Boomba, they will be able to connect to. So, and
Nalini,
also,
actually, I want to just jump in there. We just launched our YouTube channel in November of
okay,
last year.
yeah,
We were not so active on YouTube earlier, but we are now making a lot of Sesame content available in Hindi,
okay,
international dub content. So that is now available in Hindi. We are already, it's just launched, as I said, in December, and this is available for children on demand. So this is really a new approach rather just being on TV. You can actually find us now on YouTube. Currently, it's in Hindi, and hopefully, as we move along, you'll find a Telugu channel as well. And then we will be adding a couple of more Indian languages to this list.
this,
Now, what happened when we introduced, and why I brought this in is because Elmo is universally very popular. He's sort of top of the charts, and he's like a star. But as we introduced Cookie and we introduced Abby as two other characters, and interestingly, both have started doing really well.
or Cookie,
Because
Cookie
because
turned
what
out to,
happens with the show, you have a lot of characters,
yeah, yeah,
and you may pick and choose who you feel is favorite, and Elmo of course shines. But within our YouTube, as we are doing Muppet led specific content, which you can you can watch it whenever you choose to. So there'll be like certain streaming playlists on Abby or Cookie. We are finding that both these characters are really doing well and catching up. So it's a thing that we have learned globally as well, and this is a new learning, Nalini, that what we as Sesame have also actually rethought a lot of our strategy. Earlier, we used to have, as you said, on the street, multiple characters. But now we are finding that actually children like to, associate with a couple of characters. So we have also reduced the number of characters. Our storylines are changing because children now, and when you say 50 years ago and all of this time in between, viewing habits have changed, preferences have changed, all of that. So keeping all of that in mind, I think what we are proposing and what you're seeing is those changes. And to that point, as we now, not just in India, many other countries, we are looking at engaging through digital platforms like YouTube. We are seeing, at least in this case, I can speak to in India, that there is a lot of interest, and children are associating with other characters like Cookie as well.
Yeah, because I see you also have a website, right? That you're
Yes.
bringing that some art and other things that you're bringing up on your website as well. So I guess you're trying to reach out through various media to children.
Yes.
And so a little bit about, I know you have the YouTube and you have the online website, etc. How in other ways, how are you reaching out? I read, you're going to schools and parents and things like that. So how exactly are you trying to reach out to children across the country?
So, Nalini, that's a really good question, because I think since the show is really our flagship, and you spoke to Sesame Street, Gully Gully Sim Sim, but in India specifically, we also have a community outreach program. So that's very much in Anganwadis, in primary schools, to really put it, and that's really a key part of our program as well in India. So we have programs, for example, as we speak, we have a program running in Meghalaya where we are working in 3,000 Anganwadis, where we have built out the curriculum based on the state level and the national level curriculum framework, looked at it, did a new need state analysis, understood what curriculum is available, made supplementary and mapped our curriculum. Now we will go into a phase where we will create, whether they are printables, whether they are manipulatives, whether there's AV requirement, whatever it is, then training material for the workers, ICDS workers and Anganwadi workers, so that then can be delivered to the children in the right manner. So we actually work in, this is just one example. Similarly, we are doing programs around WASH, around gender. We have a father's engagement program. So there are several programs that actually we are running in classrooms and communities. So that's the other side of Sesame, and this is also the case in the US, where there's Sesame in communities. So we have the flagship Sesame Street, or in this case, Gully Gully Sim Sim, but we do have extensive in community programs that is more specifically in India. Now, you did say a point that to reach parents and kids where they are. So I think given this, and as we throughout the COVID lockdown and now subsequently, the gradual opening of the, economy, of schools, of businesses, etc., what we recognize is that you have to reach parents where they are. You can't say only TV, because different ways parents are accessing and children are accessing. So therefore we grew our YouTube channel throughout the lockdown, because now TV, the show will come at certain points of time. Now they can actually go onto the YouTube channel and access it as per their convenience, that same, some of that content. Then we also partnered with a lot of nonprofits and other platforms to share it through, IVRS, or through, some other community radio and other ways in which we could reach the parents. Because again, our parent group is a disparate group. Some of them, have all the privileges and can look at a smartphone and get to YouTube with internet, etc. So we do a wide range of products and a wide range of, ways in which we can reach different kinds, different parents who have different ways of accessing content. So I think that's been one key thing we are focusing on. So during this period of time, we did IVRS, we did community radio, we looked at, through WhatsApp, for example, and then of course, television and digital platforms.
I know, because I think there's a lot of concern, right, of how our children will continue learning. So I think
Correct.
that's a good way to reach out. So what you're saying, it's just not only on TV and digital media, but also direct outreach programs to schools and communities that you're supporting the learning. That's fantastic, actually. And when you're developing these programs, what do you think some of the key skills a preschooler needs to pick up, that we need to help our preschoolers learn and develop, and what's the best way to help them learn these skills?
I think that's really important. And as you know, Nalini, now there is so much focus on foundational learning. The National Education Policy has spoken to it. It's become fashionable now to speak about foundational learning. I don't know whether it was a much touted word before, but now it has great, everybody is talking about it. Now, when you look at these foundational years, and Nalini, I don't think I have to tell you this, but it's really critical that there are pre-numeracy and pre-literacy skills. And I think some of the data that already is in existence and some of the newer data coming out, that if you provide children these pre-literacy, pre-numeracy skills, their likelihood when they enter grades 1, 2, and 3 to actually learn the numeracy skills is much stronger. So we spend a lot of time in building those skills. So for example, whether in numeracy, whether it's understanding spatial distances, height, size, all of those things which are pre-numeracy. So then when you start actually engaging with subtraction, with other kinds of, then you start in your head understanding these things, because those are the concepts that have been built during your preschool days. And sometimes many parents sort of undermine the value or don't understand the value of preschool. This is, it's sort of, they believe that when you go into school, you just learn numbers and alphabet or whatever, but whatever is prior to that, those are really critical to help build very key, can I say, concepts for children, which we call pre-numeracy and pre-literacy, that then aid you when you go into higher grades. The other thing, as what everybody now calls, is executive skills. Someone call it 21st century skills, which are things like problem solving, creative thinking. We've done some studies where when you work with children, how their mind works. If you really explore and work with them, and Annalyn, that it's, when we said, when we sort of give children a bottle, immediately they'll say it's a bottle. But then when you start working with them, they could think of that same thing and play with it thinking it's a rocket. It could become something else. So how do you really work with children around creative thinking, problem solving, these kinds of skills that I think are important for children, forming those relationships. So when you talk about that preschool age, which you're saying, these are things that become basic. So the pedagogy that we have, it's a very exhaustive pedagogy, whether it is pre-numeracy, pre-literacy, developing the skills for children, socio-emotional well-being, building the child's own confidence, because that's very key to the child's own self-expression and learning journey. So I think if you look at it, this forms a bedrock of what then the child will really grow on. And Sesame provides this. And this is sort of very key to the program as well as the what you have called the preschool learning, experience that Sesame wants to create.
So essentially, the preschool stage, you're really tilling the soil and preparing the ground for future learning, right? And which
Yes.
means developing all these skills, their pre-numeracy, pre-literacy skills, as well as strong social emotional skills, along with their physical development, right? And as you talk about Sonali, I should mention that we've also come up with a program called Little Learners at Home program, where it's actually a guide for parents to work with their children at home with things around the house in a multi-sensorial way. How can you engage, take a theme, and through that theme, how can you provide all these basic foundational skills as you're interacting and engaging with the child. So it's something that we are also wanting parents to be more involved and engage with their children, create a wonderful learning environment at home.
We have a lot of tools for parents as well, Nalini. We did a very interesting study, which is like, we did a program called Play Every Day, which was done in low-resourced communities, not really with privileged parents, where there is not really a culture of play-based learning, because play means fun, go play cricket, go run around. And then if you say studies, you just start studying. Then you have to learn. So the fact that you can learn through play itself was a very new, novel thing for parents. Plus, they actually don't play with their children. Play means you go do your thing while I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever else. There's no culture of this. And then with intergenerational poverty, many a times they don't have the skills. They don't know how to do this. So when we actually ran the program with parents with with little or no understanding, what we saw, and this was run around Delhi NCR, that once they understood and once these tools were shared with them, they really started playing with children. And this was because it was with low resource communities. I think the key thing that we found, take objects from your local, and it could be a katori, it could be the atta, it could be anything that you have in your environment. It doesn't have to be a sophisticated toy. With that, you can learn shapes, sizes, you can build towers, you can learn, how one size. So through that, we made the parents understand that you can teach color, you can teach size, you can teach distance, many things to your children through play. It doesn't have to be, where you have to sit down and say, ab ye dekho kitab mein ye lal rang hai. But you can play में. And this was very new for many parents, because that's not how they operated. For many of us who come from maybe educated families, we play with our children. I spy something blue. So we do it very naturally. But this is not normal for many parents living in low resource communities. They may not have the time. They may be watching TV with the child, but they don't see this as an activity. So it was very heartwarming to say mothers who said, now I'm playing with my child. I'm my child's playmate. This is really something in a very different way. So to your point, I think this is where I think Sesame, when we work in our communities, this is where we are intervening, where we are trying to tell parents it doesn't matter whether you have sophisticated toys, but if you play, there could be different kinds. And of course, the emotional bond, the ability of a child and parent to bond over that game or that time becomes special. And of course, parents' own confidence really grew. And it's also a moment of de-stressing, because, that's the time they can take out for themselves.
I totally agree with what you're saying. And this is the vision behind what we are also trying to do. I think it's so important that parents learn to understand that within their home, there's so many learning opportunities, especially at that age. And how do you handhold them through that process? And I think that's fantastic that you're doing that. And we're also trying to do that through our Little Learners at Home. We're really happy to share that with you also at some time, what we're doing. And I'd love to see more of what Sesame Street is also doing in that area. And and I think so when it comes to this, the other thing is also your thoughts on screen time. There's so much talk on how much screen time, what you should do, and how does that impact a child's learning at that age?
I think This is a good question, Nalina, because I think uh, before, if you look at pre-COVID, where the child was actually going to say sometime to school, there was playtime, etc. The screen time had its own, I mean, still there was it. We were worried about increased screen time, right? Because now you have TV 24/7, and you have your favorite shows, plus you have the smartphone. So the challenge is that now with COVID, that jumped multiple fold, because parents didn't know what to do with their child, so they would put the child in front of a screen, some screen, because they needed time to do whatever else was pressing. So you're very right, in the sense of, now how do we control that screen time? Because I think goes without saying that we can't be, hopefully we will get kids back to school soon, and that situation will change. But yes, it's a cause for concern, because the child needs to actually do activities where the child is learning, engaging, and working with, because sometimes watching TV is very passive. It's one way. Even if you have play apps where you can play and you can select things, and it can be learning apps. Now there are a lot of learning apps as well, so you can say teaching color things. Even Sesame has that, for that matter. So I think the challenge is that, how do you limit it and empathize with parents who have been struggling to manage kids at home, because children have so much of energy. They need to play, go out, they need their friends, and those things have not been available to them over the lockdown. So many parents resorted to a lot of digital aids. But I really think you're very right. We will have to restrict it. We in no way, I mean, though we produce AV content, etc., but children have to be given that in proportion. They need everything. They need a holistic engagement. So even in the way we are understanding it and seeing it, that you can have digitally enabled uh, education, but it is no way a replacement for facilitated learning, facilitated engagement for children, either with parents, caregivers, and friends. It can only be some kind of a aid, and how it can support parents to send information, content to parents, to teachers, to support them to further, engage with the children. We ourselves have an app, a family app, where we give a lot of uh, games and engagement, ideas to parents, which doesn't use any digital screen time. Parents and children can do a lot of activities together. So we ourselves actually promote that, do other things. So it's like a holistic package. That's what I would say. Yeah, but it is a challenge. It's a challenge, and especially because of COVID, and there's no denying that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. We need to really learn to balance. We cannot get away from technology, but we but at the same time, how do you make use of technology as best as you can, while giving other experience? Because we know at that age in particular, they learn best by actually doing it, seeing it, feeling it, touching it, hearing things. That's best how they learn, right? So just I think, as you said, it's limiting that TV time or digital time, and really focusing on other explorative ways and to learn, I think, is very key at this age, right? And now I know you talked a little bit about the national education policy that's advocating preschool education for everyone, and all. So, where how what do you think is the role of preschools in India in the future, right? And how can you think we can make it accessible to everyone on one hand? On the other hand, we also research shows that more than actually sending a child to preschool, it's the learning environment at home that's more critical at that age, right? A stronger, a stable learning environment that is full of gives a lot of learning opportunities to the child at home, where the parent is very interested. That is actually a better predictor of future academic success in the child. So how do you balance that? And then there's also a lot of talk about homeschooling these days, right? Especially the COVID. So here you're talking about preschools, you're talking about a rich learning environment, and you're also talking about homeschooling. So how do we connect all this and ensure that our child, the children benefit the most at this age of preschool?
So, Nalina, I'm sorry I mispronounced your name and call you Nalini. For some reason, I apologize for that because
That's
it's
okay.
it's a
People do
little
get
bit, it's a
confused
little different.
occasionally. It's a different
Yeah.
twist on Nalini. It's a more common name, and
Yes.
Nalina is like the uh, unfamiliar one. But
Yeah,
that's
so
okay.
sorry about that. But just to sort of answer your question, I think it's really exciting that the National Education Policy focused on early childhood and foundational learning. But I do believe that I think the government and state governments still need to put money behind it, because if you look at the national budget, most of the funds actually go to higher education and skilling. So that's a little bit of a challenge, because we do need to improve the quality of education provided across the institutions, especially Anganwadis. I'll speak to the Anganwadis and government-run institutions. Private, of course, has its own, sort of access to resources, etc. But at least for government-run preschools and Anganwadis, it's really important. The bigger concern, I think, as we talk about preschools and all, there's a lot of importance of preschools, which is not, I think, there is not great understanding of it among parents. And I think we need to build that understanding. For the simple reason, I mean, if you look at the recent National Family Health Survey that actually came to a stop because of COVID, but even whatever data was coming out from there early enough in March of 2020, that children actually 5 and below are not there in the Anganwadis anymore. It's the first time they actually included data on, Anganwadi attendance. So they found that in right from Maharashtra, which still had a higher attendance at 5 of say 23% of kids of 5 years around in Anganwadis, but actually by 5, and then there's ASAR data which shows that kids are already in grade 1. So this is an anomaly across India, right? So if people feel that schooling begins from class 1, before that they're playing or doing something, but actually schooling begins from grade 1. So I think that is the first thing we have to talk to parents about, that why is that preschool learning important? Sometimes they are in some form of play school or they're doing something, but by 5 it's a very early. So if children are already in grade 1 by 5 and 6, how are we looking at this in terms of the curriculum and the learning aids for children? So I think there is definitely, we have to think about that, because if you have children who are 5 and 6 in grade 1, the child who is 6 will learn very differently versus who's just turned 5. And this is some of the challenges we are finding across, when you said about preschool, that this is how parents think about school. Learning कब शुरू होगा, serious learning वो class 1 से ही शुरू होगा. So that's some of the things that we have to really work on to explain this. And I think the NEP, when it has brought in the focus from 3 and above, I hope it will change that, not just for the way education system is structured, but how parents are thinking about when learning should start and why it is so important. So I think that's the first point I'd like to make. Speaking to the learning environment, I think both school and parents are very important. It's, many a times, as when I gave you the example of play every day, a lot of parents believe that the school will take care of the education, or if they can afford it, some level of tuition or coaching can be given. But I think the role of the parent has become very significant, and COVID related, data that has emerging from what happened, how families managed education, the role of the parent, sometime an older sibling, and some other, maybe an older relative, has become very significant. As we do a catch-up game, because children have not just lost a year, but they have, what the data is showing, the children have forgotten what they had learned. So for example, if a child is in grade, is going to be promoted to grade 3, who was probably in March 20 just having completed grade 1. So grade 2 they've missed out. And the findings are showing that even what they had learned in grade 1, a lot of that they have forgotten. So I think the role of the parent is very, very significant to just help the child cope with all of this. Because the education system will try to push, but I think to your point, that's a very important reality to keep in mind. If you're talking about homeschooling, whether children should just give up school and just be homeschooled, I'm a little worried on that, because some of the data that we are reading that is coming out, the children who are dropping out are not necessarily being schooled at home. They've started working in tea stalls, in small local businesses, supporting mothers at home, doing some level of caregiving. So I'm really worried about that as well. So when we say homeschooling, it may work for a certain socioeconomic status or strata, but it may not work across society. So I think to your point, I would definitely say that the home environment should support children, especially now, given the learning loss, given the stress. The child is going to go back to school. A lot of concern is around that. So the role of the parent is very significant, and we should support that, and we should help children through either play-based learning methodology, managing stress, looking at all of those things as children. So to your point, create that learning environment, which can make the child, the learning exciting, but also stress-free. And the second point is, when you say homeschooling, I think we should be very specific. Who are we talking about? Because there are some concerns, because in India, when we looked at enrollment in primary grades, it was very good. But we are still worried about what could happen to those enrollment numbers as we look at that. Families have been hit by livelihood issues. Already learning has been poor. Many children have been, doing other things, and the reports are showing, are causing concern. So I think those would be my concerns as I try to answer your question on home-based learning.
Yeah, I know you've covered a lot. I think essentially what you're saying is homeschooling is not for everyone, right? If you want to homeschool as a parent, you yourself need to have a certain level of education and understanding about what to do and how to help your child. So, but then essentially, whether the child is sent to even if the child is in preschool, a good connection between the school and the parent. If the parent if we can support the parent and help the parent continue with that education that's happening in the school, I think it really benefits that child, that partnership. Absolutely. And for supporting the parent in helping their child learn, I think that's key, because as parents, we are lost. We don't know what to do, right? Yeah. We think the neighbor's child is counting to 100, but my child is counting to 10. Yeah. So, why? There must be something wrong with me. I'm not teaching my child the right thing. So there's so much of misconception of what a child should learn at that age too. So I think a lot of hand-holding on what, like you said, what the pre-literacy and numeracy skills, all that. What is it at that age that child should, what are the key skills that the parent needs to support the child with at that age? I think that becomes important. So also, now we're talking about a lot of preschools opening up, right? The moment you say preschool, we did a recent survey, of parents to find out within our community of what they want for preschool education in the coming year. And interestingly, overwhelmingly, they want their child to learn their 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, right? So it comes back to the academic aspect. This you're talking preschoolers, 3 to 5-year-olds. So the first instinct that comes to mind when you say education is this concept of, learning math and reading and all that. But do you think as a priest, if somebody's, you sent your child to a preschool, what is it that as a parent you should be looking for in a preschool education for your child?
Yeah. So, I mean, my kids are also really much older now. I mean, they're, some 20 and late exiting teens now. So I have much older kids, so seen children through some earlier, like you, enjoyed, they of course got their Sesame on CDs. We didn't have screening of Sesame Street. So my kids are really much older. But saying that, I think, it's really, very interesting that, you should raise this point about, uh, sorry, I just for a minute, can you just repeat the last part of your question?
So what I was saying is, the fact that parents, when you think education, are only
Sorry,
in
correct.
terms of math and
Yeah.
and writing and handwriting and
Yeah.
knowing their reading, etc. But at that age, if I'm as a parent want to send my child to a preschool, what should I be looking for in a preschool education?
Sorry, yeah.
Right?
So I forgot.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
that's the main thing that.
Yeah. So if you remember,
Then the pressure with NEP and foundation courses,
correct.
every child should be learning 1, 2, 3s and ABCs when they're 3 and 4 year old. So I just want to get your view.
So and I'm sorry, and why I was, and because before I went into further explaining this, if you remember, I mean, you said your children are probably as old as mine. Sometimes you wondered why at 2.5 a child should be picking up a pencil and drawing a line. Their motor skills are hardly developed, right? And even if you gave them big crayons or something, they should be making scribbling, making big images, but not drawing standing line, sitting line, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
That time we didn't know all of this. So when our child went to a school at 2.5 and 3, and the child brought back a copybook with standing line, we say, "Wow, dekho, the child is picking up a pencil," but that's not the age. So I think you're very right. We need to manage the aspirations of parents. I think that is really, really significant. What is it that is age appropriate? I think that needs to be really also sort of clarified. Because if for us, and I know, if you look at why the Baijus of the world do so well, is because it's linked into this sort of success indicator of passing an exam. That's very big for the Indian parent. What are those milestones of success for a child? That, are you first in class? Did you get 10 on 10? Like, there has to be those kinds of benchmark. And how do you evaluate a child? I think that's really, I mean, I would deeply question that it's our culture. If we have to make a shift, that shift has to start from go. We have to begin now, a child at this age, their milestones are very different. It's not about ABC or just about, counting 1 to 100. There are other things which equally make a child, those milestones should be recognized. And I think we as a community need to work harder in making parents really understand what could be those milestones that you should be looking at for a child, and looking at healthy development of a child, and therefore say, yes, the child is doing well. Or from you, I feel like a parent, yeah, I'm focusing. And, let's be honest, parents may want that. So let's address it in a much more positive way. So whether this, when you said math and alphabet and all, so just, I'm also questioning that my son went into play school when he was 2.5, 3. He should not have been picking up a pencil and drawing straight line and sleeping lines. That's not the age. His motor skills are not ready for it. And then the teachers saying, isko achhe se banao, that doesn't make any sense. So I really would say that really need to question that. The other part I would really like to sort of emphasize is that we had done a passion point study, and this is about 2 years ago, multi-country study, where it was really interesting. The top, usually education used to hit the top level. Parents still want to see their child succeed. Now, success can be defined in many different ways. Success could be seen in a way, the child being confident, much more aware of their situation, much more able to talk. So they started looking at different kinds of success indicators. But this was generally. Now, how do you marry that aspiration of the parent to understanding the milestones, that this is what success looks like for your child at this age? I think is what we need to do as educators, need to do as, building that social culture that, if you think your child should be confident, this is what preschool is trying to do, is build that confident child who has strong self-identity, who's able to play, who's able to engage. This is what confidence looks like. This is what, a basic. So I think we need to do much more, awareness around it. I think it exists in parents, but the culture in our country has been so driven by examinations, grading, and certain kinds of milestones. I think we all need to work together to change some of those milestones.
Absolutely right. What if you really think about it, we're trying to prepare our children for the future that we don't know that what exists, right? So today everybody's talking about key skills like problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and social emotional learning, right? Those are the skills that we really need to focus on, the build in the foundational age itself. So, encouraging their curiosity and giving them the joy of learning, experience that. So they giving them the tools so they know to learn, and if they have to unlearn something and then relearn it, giving them the tools for that, right? So I think it's so important that we set the, before the NEP comes out, actually have the right mindset for what to look, parents should be looking for in preschool education. I think that becomes so important.
Nalina, I was reading a very interesting article about how the education system that had been set up was set up to create, people who could work post the Industrial Revolution, right? It was catering for that kind of an economy and that kind of a framework where, the education system went through 14 years of education, went into college, created a certain kind of skill and a kind of worldview, right? Now that has changed very dramatically. I mean, and we've all been talking about this, that, once I met a young man who said, I have changed 10 jobs by the time he's 35. I'm like, what were you doing? What are these jobs you were holding, part-time or full-time or whatever? So young, it's like, if you look at our parents, they held one job. My dad was in the Air Force, he joined, he retired, right? I have changed a couple of jobs. So the next generation, completely different. Some may hold longer jobs, they change jobs more frequently, they want to be more experimental. Even job security is not there anymore. Yeah, and with the gig economy, which is a whole other way of, the way the world is working, new kinds of job opportunities. So I think the education system needs to really build a very new way of thinking among children that allows exactly what, you just also meant, those creative skills. Everybody says today that, those creative skills is what is going to prepare you for the future. Many, skills that you're learning will be redundant very soon, because either those sectors are being automized, or those jobs are being performed by machines or computers. So, people used to do coding. Let's teach children coding, or let's do this. But those coding jobs are now gone. You have all these block codes, and people are using those block codes to build, like, if you look at blockchain, etc., which now we all talk about. But there's not much more to do in that, because the early engineers have done whatever is required. So, I mean, I think if we can't reach a child at grade 12 to talk about this, and then that child feels that my education system, what I've done is not useful for me. Yeah. And it cannot be based on rote-based learning. That is also not helping us in any way. So I think coming back to West, what you just spoke about, math, numeracy, those kinds of, they are needed. The child has to read. The child needs literacy. You have to read fast. You can't be ignorant. And we are focusing that so many words a child must be able to read in a minute. Therefore, read the sentences completely. That's a skill you need for life. But when you're looking at the whole set of skills, I think what we are saying is the other skills are becoming more and more important and cannot be ignored. So the whole child development that we are talking about is very much in keeping with preparing that child to be flexible, to be, creative, to be adaptive. So those, and we are all talking about this adaptive learning. I mean, these are all new concepts even you and I are now dealing with. At 40, people have had to reinvent their lives, because whatever you did suddenly is not making sense anymore. So I think this is a new reality, and for that, it can't be that we face it when we are in our 20s and 30s. The child's preparation begins from now, because this generation is looking at a very different world than
Interesting.
you and I did.
Now, it's interesting you talk about the coding right now. There's a huge coding drive with White Hat Junior and everything coming today too, right? I was just reading an article the other day, I think New York Times or somewhere. It's talking about the research done recently on how more than coding, you should be teaching your child music at that age. That develops the brain more, develops all their critical thinking skills, problem solving, analytical, logical, whatever skills. The cognitive development is much higher when you teach them music at that young age rather than coding at 3 and at that young age. So anyway, it's interesting, that a lot of interesting points came out. I think our ultimate goal is to bring out the best in every child, bring the full potential in every child. And it's really wonderful that so much that Sesame Street is also doing. So given this whole changing situation of what we want to educate, and the focus on preschool children is also key, because that's when their brains are growing the fastest, they're most adaptable, absorbing everything. So I think it's such a critical age. And I know you're addressing, really focusing on that age, and not only in education, but also values and emotions and social emotional learning. So many aspects to help the child learn and grow and develop. So given that scenario and new ways of thinking of things, so where do you see the direction for Sesame Workshop India itself heading, in which direction to adapt to the new changes that are happening in our country today?
So I think that's a really relevant question, because as Sesame, I think we will continue to do what we do best, is provide children with play-based learning, which is very key to what we do, based on executive skills. So we will continue to do that. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that, given the current context, social-emotional learning has become very key. So as Sesame, while we understand there are others who also provide, matching tools around learning through, numbers and other things, but Sesame has developed a lot of content, a lot of learning around the SEL content. So I think that is something we will definitely be focusing on, and we are positioning that across all our conversations, saying that while we provide all of this, this is something we think is critical, especially as parents and children both emerge out of the COVID. Not just children, but parents are both stressed, and sometimes parents more so, and that then actually impacts children. So I think we are very, very key that both parent facing and child facing, we should be looking at SEL. The other thing we are very concerned, and as I spoke about learning loss, is how do we understand the rejigging of curriculum and re-looking at the curriculum for children, and also adding components like what I said around social-emotional learning into that curriculum. Because you can't, everybody's talking about accelerated learning. They're speaking about other kinds of catch up, and 3 months of this, 4 months of that. But just to remember that children have that much capacity and no more. So we have to work with that age group, keeping that in mind. If they have lost time, you can't get it back. If they've lost 10 months, you can't pack everything of that in 3 months. It's not possible. Even for an adult, it's not possible. So, when you're talking about children more so. So I think we as Sesame, I think going forward, are deeply engaged in that conversation to see how best we can support these transitions from back to school, handling the social emotional issues, and also the learning. So these are things that for us are really important, that we will be additionally considering as we continue to do our work.
So it's really I'm wonderful been talking to you today. So much this, we can continue, go on and on and on about this, in this whole space, right? And I think I thank you so much for joining us in this conversation today and sharing with so many key points. I hope parents take away from this on, the importance of, I think one is also spending time, even if you're watching TV, co-viewing is better than just making the child sit in front of TV, even if it's Sesame Street. Right? Well, it's good for the parent to sit with the child, sing along with the child, and ask questions and engage with the child as they watch. So that parent-child engagement in every aspect is important, and at the same time, providing a nice, good learning environment at home and a stable, loving, caring environment. And I think that's what we hope uh, parents everywhere will strive to create that environment at home. And I'm glad that Sesame Street is taking a huge step in the direction of supporting parents in that effort. So anyway, thank you so much, Sonali, for talking to us today.
No, Nalina, it's my absolute pleasure. I think, because of our like-minded approach, I really hope we can, have more such conversations that really take this message forward.